r/ask Reddit, George Carlin said, think of how stupid the average person is, and realize half of them are stupider than that. What real-life example have you seen that validates this view? I am a police officer in a medium-sized suburban town in Texas. I have been in law enforcement for 14 years. I love my job, I love how I get to help people, and I love how I get to cause positive changes in people's lives. I love how 99.9% of the time, my badge is shiny. Today my badge is not shiny. I am tired of hearing excuses given by other people for a police officer's misconduct. I am tired of excuses being made for people who tarnish my badge. I am so tired of hearing how officers have a stressful job and their misconduct was a result of that stress. You know who else is under stress? The people who called us, that person whose loved one just committed suicide, the family huckled us because they found grandma dead and now we're asking everyone questions, the 7-11 clerk who just had a gun shoved in his face, and even the guy we just put in handcuffs and told him he is losing his freedom. Sorry, but our stress is low compared to these folks. We might have to go into these s. I don't believe in hiding the misconduct or unlawfulness of other officers, and I have always spoken up. What many forget, standing behind the thin blue line doesn't mean concealing the misconduct of other officers, it means confronting those officers so they don't do something to ruin their lives, the lives of others, or violate the law or code of conduct. It means walking up to the officer with his knee on a suspect's neck and saying, "Dude, this is too much, stop," before the officer commits murder. It means walking up to the officer who has been drinking all night and saying, "Dude, I'll give you a ride home." Instead of hiding misconduct, prevent it, help your fellow officer not do something to ruin his life or another's life. If you do see misconduct, address it, take it to the appropriate level, stop tarnishing my badge. We took an oath to uphold the law, uphold your ethics, and protect our communities. Sometimes that means arresting other police officers or holding them accountable. A patrol unit. Floyd can be seen in a surveillance video falling to the ground next to the unit on the sidewalk side of the unit. Cell phone footage then shows the officer on top of Floyd's neck on the opposite side of the unit, the street side. There is a random man in the background telling Floyd just to get in the car and he can't win. Floyd can be heard saying he knows and he's done. This implies that Floyd may have resisted or attempted to escape, but was still restrained in the handcuffs. Floyd can be heard multiple times saying he can't breathe. The cell phone video shows the officer kneeling on top of Floyd's neck for at least 8 minutes, with around 4 of those minutes with Floyd being unconscious. Even if Floyd did attempt to resist or escape, there was no reason to hold him down for 8 minutes. What was the point of restraining him for so long? Why did the other officer not assist the primary officer with restraining Floyd so they could get him in the patrol unit? Badges of all police officers. Worst of all, this officer tortured his victim for 8 minutes. Imagine your last thoughts and memories being those of a police officer, a person who the public is supposed to be able to trust, placing his body weight in your neck, slowly asphyxiating you against hot asphalt while he asks you if you're still a tough guy. I hope this officer, Danny officer who allowed this to happen, is tried and convicted. It's going to be some time before I can polish my badge back to ashine. In the meantime, a family is suffering, a community is burning, all because of one guy who should have never been an officer. What do I think? I think assholes like this make my job that much harder and damage the trust one works so hard for. I think assholes like this ruin people's lives and ruin families. I think assholes like these should be stuck in a prison with all of the people they ever arrested. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be? iPhone of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy. Wow, thanks for gold. For all the police officers here, what would the charges be? iPhone of the bystanders pulled the police officer off of the poor guy. Wow, thanks for gold. I'm a former police officer, and so have had plenty of training in physical restraint of individuals being arrested. There is no police academy training officers to kneel on someone's neck to subdue them. That's how you kill a person. There is extensive training on how to avoid seriously injuring a person while restraining them, and I guarantee you every one of these officers was trained to never strike a person in the neck or choke them. The officer who killed him is very clearly liable for manslaughter at the very least, and I think the other officers who stood by have some accountability as well, because they knew damn well that was not how you handle a person, and should have stepped up. Absolutely sick to my stomach. I'm a lieutenant in my hometown police department. I started my day by showing the video to my officers and making sure my people understood that this is murder, plain and simple. You never, outside of a life and death struggle, do anything like this. George Floyd was handcuffed and on the ground. If he was still struggling badly enough that they felt a need to hold him down, there's 100 ways to do it safely. Use of force should always be as measured and considered as possible. There will always be times where an officer sees danger and has to make a split-second decision without the luxury of weighing the consequences. That clearly was not the case here. He had all the time in the world to think about what he was doing. He had multiple people there telling him to stop. And none of his fellow officers intervened. All of that is why I find this incident particularly disgusting. They had so many chances to do the right thing. Luckily, I have not a local, am a Fed. 5 years into the job. George Floyd was murdered and it's ducking disgusting. We're trained that anything involving the neck is a no-go and is considered deadly force. We were also trained that if you make an arrest in a prone position, you search and then immediately move them onto their side or a seated position because the risk of asphyxiation is so great. If a suspect says they can't breathe, believe them and take measures to correct to it. This training is reinforced at least twice a year in our use of force training. These officers deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Retired after 28 years. Nothing less than murder. All the guys I worked with would never have considered doing something like that. You treat combative in custodies once they're secured as human beings. Nothing should be personal. Once they've been subdued and you are safe as an officer, you stand him up, pat him down and understand that your arrestee is at a low point in his life. Give him some dignity and you'll generally get his respect. It works 90+% of the time. That man was subdued and nobody should have been on him at that point. I'm a police officer in California. I am absolutely disgusted by the officers' actions. When someone is in our custody you must treat them properly. I don't care if they are arrested for murder or forgery. They are a human with a story and they deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. I had tears streaming down my face watching the video of George Floyd. We swore to protect our communities and that's what we set out to do every day. Putting a knee into the neck of a handcuffed man for an extended period of time isn't protecting. A man has lost his life due to the gross negligence of an evil person. May he rest in peace. Deleted. Cop here. Disgusted. There are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't have happened. Simple, easy, steps that should have been taken. Lessons that policing has learned over the past 200 years and basic things taught in every academy. Make no mistake, this was murder. Maybe not premeditated murder, but nonetheless murder. I will be angry if those officers do not get indicted. I was a cop in the military. In the police academy this was one of the things that taught us not to do as it could crush the windpipe. The only time I was ever taught to use chokes and neck holds was in combat training for deployments. But when we got back we always had to attend retraining classes to relearn what we can do stateside. Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold? Didn't the same happen in New York a few years ago with Eric Garner being put in a chokehold? Sheriff's deputy here, and I must say that I am disgusted by the unnecessary loss of life. There are moments that make me regret what I do, and this is one of them. I've met my share of racists wearing a badge and I'm ready for a career change. The oath we take is to uphold the law and constitution, so for the officers seen there that could have stepped in and prevented this one bad apple always ruins the bunch, unfortunately. I pray for the George's family and that justice is served. Throw away for obvious reasons, and yes, I'm a white male. Edit wasn't expecting this to blow up as it has. I'm responding to you guys when I can and I'm glad we can have a conversation about this. We do not unionize in my state for law enforcement, and I see many comments about systemic protection and abuse. I have never worked under a police union, but I have worked with people who were unionized and I have heard my share of stories where lays protected by the union. Stories I hear are: I am a police officer in the UK. I always find these things so hard to watch. Your natural instinct is to want to find a way to justify the actions of a fellow officer, but I'm finding more and more often that is becoming impossible. This video is one of the absolute worst things I've ever seen and there is no justifiable reason for it to have happened. George Floyd was murdered and that is the bottom line. Nobody is above the law and putting on a uniform does not mean you should be allowed special dispensation to behave like an animal. Positional asphyxia and the risks are drummed from day one of training. As soon as someone is restrained, you have to have them in a position where they can breathe freely. To have someone screaming they can't breathe and to have them pinned down by the neck whilst they slowly die, knowing all this and doing nothing to help, not only is that murder, but I would say that is torture, and the sheer fear George Floyd must have felt in the moments before he popped the shooting of Jean Charles de Menezes to see that, but I cannot understand how regularly law enforcement in the US are shown to be using excess force against people of color. And fundamentally it's an issue of institutional racism. And when the bare bones of the institution are steeped in racism, how do you ever combat it? Finally, I want to say, my heart goes out to the family of George Floyd and to the community he is part of. It's devastating that this has happened to you, and I hope you get the justice you deserve. As a son of a former police officer, my dad worked really hard to be an honest cop. His department was full of racists. They didn't like him because he was a decent cop. They couldn't do anything wrong on front of him. We saw the news together and I saw him wipe a tear, but tried really hard to hide it. I know he's sad and I don't want to push him to talk about it, but we both know things like this is always gonna happen, and that is a really sad fact. I can't possibly understand why a human being would do something like this. I work for a US federal bureau but am not a local police officer. All 4 cops need to go to jail. Derek Chauvin, the cop with the knee on George's neck, should have gone to jail long ago. The guy apparently has a history of doing this. This is his 3rd time in 15 years. Black people need to keep fighting and white/Asian/Latino people need to support them. Justice for cases like this won't come easy, and it won't come soon. But if they keep fighting, I truly believe that one day, eventually, it will come. I used to be a police officer. It was ducking embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. One of the reason I quit was because I had no pride in my job anymore. For the people doubting if I used to be a cop or not, this is the only proof I really have. In order to get the police officer flaren/r/protect and serve, you need to send the mods a pic of your police issued ID. Haven't been to that sub since before I quit, but here it is, imager.com/a/duck2knob. I used to be a police officer. It was ducking embarrassing going out the day after something like this happened. One of the reason I quit was because I had no pride in my job anymore. For the people doubting if I used to be a cop or not, this is the only proof I really have. In order to get the police officer flaren/r/protect and serve, you need to send the mods a pic of your police issued ID. Haven't been to that sub since before I quit, but here it is, imager.com/a/duck2knob. Retired. It disgusts me as the job is difficult enough as it is, working mostly in sensitive neighborhoods. Brutality like this makes it far more difficult. Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training, to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation? Serious question to the police officers participating in this discussion. Obviously there are a myriad of factors that possibly contributed to this incident, from poor training, to an officer being unfit for duty, etc. My question is, how is it possible that the 3 other officers on the scene took no steps to intervene, or at the very least, check on the status of the victim? Is there any reason for their lack of awareness or decision to stand aside while they, along with many other bystanders, can clearly see the man dying in front of them? What justification, if any, is possible in this situation? Since we're tapping into the police community here, can someone please explain what, if anything, the bystanders could have done to help George Floyd? Call 911 and report police brutality. In all seriousness, what is the preventative action here, since none of the police officers on the scene, 4 of which were physically restraining him, reacted to his being murdered right in front of them? Edit. Thank you/murder by modem for this link. ACLU, www.aclu.org/issues/criminal-law-police/reform-police-record-police-conduct. I'm adding it to my post because I think others will appreciate it and I don't want it to get lost. Edit. In summary, some of the options proposed are below. I apologize if I omitted, misrepresented, or oversimplified anything. The bystanders in this case did many oft-his things, and they were a voice for George when he couldn't speak for himself. 1. Always record the incident, live streaming if possible, and inform the police they are being wrecker. Result in physical, potentially fatal, and legal ramifications for the individual involved unless the group of bystanders are organized enough and outnumber the officers on the scene to the extent that they can safely take control without further harm. 6. Systemic change, vote, local and national, for people that value human life and will implement change to protect it. This is not an anti-gun sentiment. If you value your right to carry a gun, then vote for people that support that. Be vocal in demanding justice when these incidents occur. Push for improved training, hiring practices, and accountability within the police force. I would imagine that this may also include increasing pay for the police force to attract more suitable individuals in tough positions. Possibly implement a citizen-based governing body to oversee the police force and their actions. Hey, you made it to the end, nice job. Remember to like and subscribe, it's free and you can unsub whenever you want. The clown epidemic of 16. Men's styles, patterned short-sleeved button-down shirts, flannel shirts, beards, high and tight haircuts. Women's styles, yoga pants, athleisure, jumpsuits/rompers, Coachella attire. Don't know how else to describe this, but it's a distinct look. Music, country, mumble hip-hop, bad repetitive pop, EDM and festivals. Tech, automation, social media, data, mobile phones. Influencers, social networks, and how everyone thought it was a good idea to keep track of everyone in their life. Kids in 10 years will be like, so you met this guy at the pub and added him into your social network. Didn't that give him access to all your social details? Privacy will become the biggest thing ever, and loose social media connections will become the exact thing not to do. You know, when you watch documentaries now about kids in the 80s hitchhiking or stepping into a serial killer's van because they said they had puppies in there, and you scream at the TV like, what are you doing, you idiot? That's how people will think of our 2010s years. Spending the entire decade thinking last year was 2008. For Europe it will definitely be the refugee crisis. They will remember, crazy colored hair, trying to dress like people in the 90s, those old iPhones that everyone had and thought were so cool but look like bricks now, vaping, thick eyebrows, overly photoshopped and face-tuned photos back when YouTube actually allowed relatively normal people to become famous, duck lip stabbing Harambe. The death of brick and mortar and the rise of Amazon Prime. Social media. People ask me where I'm going to be in 4 months, I don't have 2020 vision jokes. The 2010s will probably be remembered for as the remake era for Disney. Looking forward to this thread being unearthed in 2029. Smiley face, I hope y'all are doing better than us. My generation is going to be known for wanting to die, and memes guess we can replace generation for decade. The rise of the smartphone. Everyone has access to the internet and can voice their opinion towards the world at any moment with all the negative effects that it brings. They will remember how great summer 2016 was. Edit, I remove it, comma. Edit 2, wow, my first medal of any kind, thanks stranger. They will remember how great summer 2016 was. Edit, I remove it, comma. Edit 2, wow, my first medal of any kind, thanks stranger. The social media explosion. Minecraft's rise, fall, and rise again. Real headlines trying to outdo the Onion. Real headlines trying to outdo the Onion. I don't like this realization. The death of traditional media. Printed newspapers and periodicals, broadcast television, and radio are fading. And while digital music way predates the 2010s, it took until this decade for pop stars to stop selling albums. They aren't tallying seed sales anymore, they're counting unique streams. People are gonna reminisce about how good the 2010s were. They may not seem good now, but just wait to see what the 20s have in store for you. Social media / influencers. Netflix / streaming, it was available before 2010, but didn't get reliable until after. Swipe dating apps. The word online dating and dating sites are now swapped with the phrases dating apps Obama / Trump. From a video game standpoint, this is the decade of the indie explosion, esports, battle royales, and microtransactions. From a cinematic standpoint, this is the age of superheroes. Comic book movies dominated in the last decade and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. From a video game standpoint, this is the decade of the indie explosion, esports, battle royales, and microtransactions. From a cinematic standpoint, this is the age of superheroes. Comic book movies dominated in the last decade and they are not going anywhere anytime soon. From a design/aesthetic standpoint, minimalism/flat design mostly due to the rise of tablets and browsing the internet on mobile devices. Clean lines, simple colors like black, white and gray. TV commercials, early 2010s ads are backed by upbeat xylophone/triangle/whistling/hand clapping music, or people breakdancing or doing the worm to obnoxious dubstep music. The late 2010s have vivid colors and imagery, vaporwave style aesthetics, and loud over-the-top spokespeople talking fast in the middle of the screen. Think Captain Obvious from the Hotels.com commercials or Terry Crews from the Old Spice commercials. Entering a new golden age of automotive design. Almost every new car from the decade is elaborately styled. Car interiors with angular, intricate dashboards, like the Ford Escape, Chevy Equinox, or Hyundai Santa Fe. This might end in the 2020s as crash safety technology requires more new cars to learn the same, and car interiors will replace dashboards and gauges with depression and memes. But really I think mental health will be one of the biggest problems going forward, and this is going to be known as the times when it emerged as a problem. The incredible rise of misinformation and irresponsible knee-jerk reaction choices on very serious topics. We've been at war for 18 ducking years. Didn't see it here so I'll mention it. The Syrian civil war and rise and fall of the Islamic State. Social media memes, smartphones, Trump. Party rock. Party rock. The decade that normalized eating ass. The meme renaissance. The wild switch from President Obama to President Trump. Say what you want, good or bad, about either of them, but their ways of doing the job are very different in many ways. Edit. Thanks for the gold and silver, whoever you are. Outrage addiction. The horrific turn the Area 51 raid took, resulting in hundreds dead and the unleashing of angry captive aliens upon the world to exact their revenge on humanity. I'm just hoping that the 20s will be the resurgence of gangster suits, black fedoras, and saying things like, "I'll punch you into mush, see." The 2010s will remember as the decade where everyone went from chill to radicalized in a surprisingly short span of time. How quick it went. Duck. Wait, last decade wasn't the 90s. Gangnam Style and Harambe. The dress was blue. How are y'all gonna leave out the most influential trend of the 2010s? Fidget spinners. They united us as a nation in a time where our country was divided more than ever. They solved overnight while boosting our economy to levels unseen since the hip-hop craze of the 90s. Don't ever forget this. The promulgation of the internet. The 2010s saw the popularity of smartphones, which has revolutionized many industries. The internet is way more a force now than it was pre-2010. Network TVs a thing because of the internet. Brick and mortar stores are dying because of the internet. Crafty Geico and progressive commercials. The beginning of automation. A ton of jobs are already automated, but this decade was probably the true beginning, from testing driverless cars and drones to entire service industries being replaced by self-service counters. This will truly be the beginning of automated industries. Knowing that global warming is going to hit us hard and doing virtually nothing about it globally. I've only been alive 2 decades, so take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But I think this will be remembered as the decade when the physical world was overtaken the online world. Dating is online. Classes are online. News is online, and it's about what politicians said online. Presidential campaigns are internet memes. Print media and physical music are disappearing. Our jobs are being taken by AI. The jobs we have left are done on computers. The cloud knows more data about us than we do. You have to have an email to sign up for anything, and apps are constantly trying to wring more digital data out of us. I know this sounds conspiratorial. Personally, I'm not against it. I think we just have to find a balance. How stupid it was to get rid of the auxiliary jack on phones. The decade where politics turned into a name-calling crap show where reason is irrelevant. I always think about this. The 80s were defined by optimistic decadence and a neon future, the 90s were a hangover from the 80s, dominated by grunge and grit, led by the freedom fighters and suburban rebel rock. The 00s is when the effects of globalism really started to take hold. Ultimately I feel like 00s were a positive time, when we experienced a brief utopia of man and machine which led to a lot of realization, inspiration and evolution. However, the evolution was somewhat organic, and even though we experienced an economic downturn, the future looked bright. The 10s were plastic. We let a reality TV show host become president. We realized the dystopian future that we're read about in books and saw in movies. The boundaries of what Israel have been stretched and shattered. The rich are living in aspirate reality in their high-rises and the poor are killing each other in the streets. It has been a time of dark hedonism which I think will result in a following period. I think this decade will be remembered for a few big things, at least in the US * millennials. The name of the game this decade. Millennials were at the center of almost every major cultural conversation. From social media and technology to jobs and the economy. Hipsters and smartphones and gaming systems and trends and Facebook and Instagram, etc., etc. Millennials had the biggest cultural impact of this decade. Obama/Trump. Obama was elected last decade, but most of his term was this decade. He got Bin Laden, passed healthcare, and triggered a whole bunch of people just because he was black. Then Trump really popped up in 2015 for his presidential run. Was it really that long ago? And he's been at the forefront of news ever since. Superhero everything. 20 MCU movies have been released this decade. Then there are the other Spider-Man movies, the DC Universe movies, Nolan's and Snyder's, as well as countless other movies and's house. Last decade was zombies, this decade is S. I can already see future history classes analyzing this like as the American people felt the loss of their own power and control over their situation, they turned towards books, movies, and television based around superheroes as a form of escapism. Because they felt like they couldn't change their own situation, it became commonplace to fantasize about those who could. Since people seem to be freaking out about how this doesn't apply to me. I should clarify that this comment was not intended to be a serious analysis of the 2010s. I made this comment because I know my American history class learned about the rise of comic books and superheroes in the 30s and analyzed their rise in popularity for similar reasons. That being said, if you asked people in the 30s why they like comics, I doubt they would tell you it was because they felt hopeless and comic books made them feel powerful. They would probably also tell you comics are cool. I'm not trying to say that every person. I'll just say that this is the best question on Ask Reddit that I've seen yet. People believing vaccines are fake. The incest porn. The incest porn. Deleted. Memes and Minecraft. I'm gonna remember the 2010s as my decade of adversity. Some of these years have been the toughest of my life. Hopefully I can look at the 2020s as the best of my life. Brexit, Trump as president, #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, Leonardo DiCaprio got an Oscar. Brexit, Trump as president, #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, Leonardo DiCaprio got an Oscar. Black president, orange president, and Tide Pods. The decade Twitter defined politics. American perspective, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness, it was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity, it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness, it was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. Cannabis legalization movement. As a graduate during the economic recession, it's the only real positive thing I remember in the past decade. And the crazy American cultural swing from Obama to Trump. It's the decade when all governments became a joke. Hey, you made it to the end, nice job. Remember to like and subscribe, it's free and you can unsub whenever you want. I'm a physician. I doctor specifically. I will tell you that the longer I work, now 15 years, my standard for the average person continues to decline. Case in point, Thanks to the awful information filtering out there, I had a patient just last week who read that vitamin D helps you resist a coronavirus infection. Well, he had also read that you can get more vitamin D by getting more sun. So he wanted to collect as much light as possible with his eyes. As a result, he stared at the sun for a solid 60 seconds and burned holes directly into his retinas, permanently reducing his vision with no chance at future improvement. One guy I met said that English is the true language of God because the Bible is written in English. I used to work in travel and the amount of people that did not understand the following was staggering. / You cannot take a 3-7 round trip night cruise from Miami to Australia, and no, your friend did not just book this. / No, there are in fact no ocean-bound cruises leaving from Arizona. / You cannot take a cruise from Miami to Hawaii and back in 7 to 10 days. / No, the airport is closed due to hurricane / flood / ice, and you cannot demand a flight in a different carrier out of the same airport in the next hour. Also no, you did not just see someone book this. / Yes, it is a shorter flight for your friends from East Coast US to the Caribbean than you in Europe, and no, nobody can change that. / Yes, I will need your DD 214 to confirm a military rate. No, your word you were in a covered unit will not suffice, and no, I am not disrespecting the military because I cannot simply take your word for it. / Yes, if a passport / visas / travel vaccinations are a need for you to travel, you will need. Customers arguing that their tattoo is backwards while their artist tries to explain that no, your tattoo is fine, it just looks backwards because that's how mirrors work. A girl in one of my college classes argued that heart transplants shouldn't be allowed because that's where the feelings are and the person receiving the heart wouldn't be the same person anymore. Oof. Good one. Okay, so my favorite was a guy who was planning his honeymoon but he didn't have a lot of money. He was bummed about the cost of air travel. A friend suggested a train ride might be cheaper. He became frustrated after a few days of trying and complained that he couldn't find any trains going to Hawaii. It still didn't sink in because he had seen pictures of trains in Hawaii. He couldn't grasp that they were shipped there. It got even more surreal after that. Friend of mine showered in cold water for a year cause he never thought of turning the other tap to see what it would do. I used to work for a chatbot app. Our app would text our users every morning with a greeting in a different language, i.e. hola, bonjour, etc. One day we got blown up by a user saying their account was hacked. She said, "My name is Kim Smith, not Kim Kanikawa, someone's hacked my account." When we explained that our service has been clearly saying hello to her in other languages every day and that Kanikawa is hello in Japanese and her account was fine, she went on a racist rant and said Disney was behind the destruction of America. Yep. About half the calls I take on a daily basis. People call 911 to ask whether Walmart is open. To report that they didn't get enough mayo on their burger. To complain that cleanup at a fatality wreck is taking too long. All sorts of silly, out-of-touch crap. Granted, there is probably some level of mental illness and / or substance abuse present in those calls. But still. My dad is a pesticide investigator for the state and heard these in a complaint. I set out all these bird feeders and bird baths but not one bird comes to my yard. I bet it is all those pesticides that crop duster is laying down in the field. Local school board member, as they were standing in her 5-acre yard with 20 or more cats running around. I just had a customer yell at me for putting their eggs in a Aspirate bag, saying they don't want all those bags and the paperons always rip. Before putting it in the bag and throwing a pound of flour on top. It was somewhat satisfying seeing their face as we heard the cracks, until I realized I'm the one who needed to clean it up. Oh, also she complained that we hadn't warned her about the fragility of eggs. Getting a misdialed call from a random person who gets mad at you because you're not the one he/she was looking for. Happens with me several times a year. Old boss had a morning routine of walking around the office with a bucket. He was watering all of the plastic flowers. I once owned a smart car and some stranger approached me at a gas station about why I didn't have a slow vehicle sign in the back of it, since all moped cars must have that. I tried explaining that it was a real car, just a bit smaller, but he didn't take it. According to him I was driving illegally and he was surprised the police hadn't stopped me yet on the highway. At the start of working from home due to COVID, I had a few users submit tickets for connectivity issues. These tickets got through 2 lines of support before landing in my queue. Turns out that the corporate Wi-Fi doesn't follow you home and you need home internet in order to connect to the VPN. I used to manage a retail store that sold teen clothing, so as expected, I primarily had teens working for me. One employee came to the back room while I was on break and asked what I was eating. Somehow the topic turned to how I should have brought chicken for lunch because she wanted chicken. I told her I was vegetarian and therefore don't eat meat. She tells me she can't not meat. It's poultry, and vegetarians can eat poultry. She said at the grocery store the aisles list meat and poultry separately, so they're obviously different. We argued for a couple of minutes before I finally told her to go back to the sales floor. She didn't last at the job long, but damn. The Georgia senator that wanted to prevent sending troops to Ani's land because he was worried it would capsize. You know the reason you bury a rattlesnake after you kill it is because bees will eat it, then bees can sting people with rattlesnake venom. Guy I heard constantly trying to pick up women on public transit. I do aquatic habitat restoration in a spring-fed river that people frequently tube/float on. Myself and numerous others been asked if it comes back around so they can get out. At the DMV. I went to renew my license. I was waiting in a room with the computers that people use to take the written portion. The clerk sat a man down, looked him in the eyes and said, if you pull your phone out it's an automatic fail. The window licker says it while pulling out his phone and immediately failing. I worked in retail for a few years and it taught me that many people are either incapable or unwilling to read. I have had people walk up to me to ask me how much something is, only for the price tag to be featured prominently on the item. It's $9.99, ma'am. How did you know? It says so on the price tag, ma'am. I worked with a lady who was remarking on how a friend of hers had lost a bunch of weight. She pondered, I wonder how many Diet Cokes she had to drink to do that. Edit, same lady was convinced beyond repair that when you sneeze, the air only comes out of your nose. There was no convincing her otherwise. I teach 6th grade. One time a parent came to me after trying to help their child with math homework and asked, what number is worth? It feels like it changes with every problem. I worked at a bank. Mobile depositing had just became a thing. We received a picture of someone's cash for deposit. Yeah. There is a considerable overlap between the intelligence of the smartest bears and the dumbest tourists. Yosemite Park rang air on why it's hard to design a bear-proof garbage can. A woman I used to work with who insisted that any animal could reproduce with any other animal. She believed that sperm from any animal was the same and that DNA was irrelevant. She believed this because she once saw some sickly, possibly deformed puppies and decided that they must have been half dog and half rat. A former co-worker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, do you mean a bachelor's degree? She insisted it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. Then she led me back to her office and pointed at her diploma, to the word baccalaureate, and said, see. Bachelorette. A former co-worker was talking about how she wanted to go back to school to get her master's degree because she only had a bachelorette degree and wanted more job opportunities. I said, do you mean a bachelor's degree? She insisted it was pronounced bachelorette when it was given to a woman. Then she led me back to her office and pointed at her diploma, to the word baccalaureate, and said, see. Bachelorette. I had a bald man return a hairdryer because it burned his shed. Was at a party and someone's crafty old truck got stuck in some mud, so instead of sobering up and coming back the next day, he makes a Molotov cocktail with gas and throws it at the truck. The truck caught fire and was completely destroyed. Jason. Every time I put on my glasses so I can see better while looking for my glasses. The woman that called into a radio station to complain about theater crossing signs on a highway saying that the deer will see the sign and consider this place a safe place to cross the road. www.youtube.com/watch?v=RFCRJ www.youtube.com/watch?v=RFCRJ When I was in high school, we were reading a short story about what would have happened if the Japanese attacked us back with nuclear weapons after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A girl in my class raised her hand and said something along the lines of, why does this matter? None of it is real anyway. The teacher had to ask her to clarify, but this girl thought World War II and the bombing of Japan were just from a movie and didn't actually happen. The best part is, the girl was half Japanese. Edit, wow, thank you for all of the upvotes. I have a ton more stories about this girl, so maybe I'll post some on a different subreddit soon. Worked at a larger grocery chain whose deli used scales that would show you digitally the weight, so 1.5 pounds would show 1.50 lbs on the scale, etc. The person I worked, F35YRS, had to ask me to come over and tell her how much she had sliced every time she assisted someone for over 4 months. She had passed the written and verbal test they give to verify that you should be able to do this. She didn't seem to have problems reading any other signs or numbers, so I don't think dyslexia played a part, but man, it was so frustrating trying to do my job and hers. Along the same line, my previous employer used a 100-minute clock for the time clock. This meant if you arrived in time, your punch would read 8:50. The manager of the department assigned timekeeping to another person, because he knew he didn't understand it. After several weeks of everyone punching in at 8:50, we all get called in for it. First of all, we were all salaried, except one person, so the time didn't really matter in terms of the law. But it kept the peace, so no one complained. We all got ripped up one side and down the other, and no one was allowed to speak. Not that any of them tried, except me. When the manager and the timekeeper finally shut up, I pointed out that the clock runs on 100 minutes, not 60, so therefore we were all on time, or early. They stood dumbfounded when they looked at the clock, and I literally showed an analog clock with 100 minutes. So then I walk it further to point out that as salaried employees, none of these matters, and that none of us. I work in IT. I once had a lady call me from home because she couldn't get connected to her VPN. I asked her if she was connected to her home wireless network. She replied saying that she did not have home wireless. I then asked how she was connecting to the internet. Her reply was, I'm using the cell tower. I can see it from my house. While this is technically possible with a hotspot or cellular card in your PC, this isn't what she meant. She thought she could get internet service via Wi-Fi from the cell tower. One of my nieces had a cold as a toddler and was breathing through her mouth. My ex-BIL flipped out because he didn't want her to get carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing through her mouth instead of her nose, the normal way. Pensive face. I'm an insurance claims adjuster. If you truly knew how many stupid drivers you're sharing the road with, you'd never drive again. Edit, because I keep getting this question, I avoid driving whenever possible. I have a car, but I take the bus to / from work. I never drive at night. I'm an insurance claims adjuster. If you truly knew how many stupid drivers you're sharing the road with, you'd never drive again. Edit, because I keep getting this question, I avoid driving whenever possible. I have a car, but I take the bus to / from work. I never drive at night. When farms have trouble producing their crops, and you ask some crap if that worries them, I don't get my food from a farm, I get it from Walmart. On 9/11, the general manager called his daughter, who was attending ASU, to wake her up and make sure she saw what was going on. The customer service manager said, "It won't be on her TV. Arizona is 2 hours behind us." On 9/11, the general manager called his daughter, who was attending ASU, to wake her up and make sure she saw what was going on. The customer service manager said, "It won't be on her TV. Arizona is 2 hours behind us." I worked at Little Caesars and we were proofing the dough for pizza. My boss said, at 7 p.m., that the dough needed to rise for 12 hours, and took out her calculator to do the math. So I said, that's gonna be 7 a.m. Then she said the dough will expire in 48 hours and started doing the math again. I told her it would expire 2 days from now, and she said that's kinda weird how that works out, huh? I quit shortly after that. I work at a restaurant. We were low on tomatoes for our tomato soup, so one person grabbed potatoes to see if we could use those instead. When my mum unironically claimed that the moon landing was fake because the moon was like 40 times the size of Earth. How that proves it was fake, I don't know. Hate to think she raised me, lol. I had a friend once who truly believed that magicians like Chris Angel and David Blaine had some kind of magical power or telekinesis, something along those lines. While watching one of those magicians on TV performing on the street, he argued, how could this be fake? Look at all those people. Can't fake all that. Has to be some kind of power or magic. I would then have toast. Do you realize that movies are fake? They fake entire universes, planets, cities, war, etc. He didn't get what I was getting at. Infantryman was told to trim the hedges. So he lifted the lawnmower. His buddy started it. As a brand new medic, I spent about 6 hours pulling finger meat from the hedges. Edit, thank S for the award. Update, sorry, I'm a redder and on a phone. For clarification, it was early 2004 after OIF1 in the 82nd. I was a PFC with only a year and a half in service. We bandaged him, then used tourniquet, temporarily. Senior medics took him to the ER. I was field sanitation qualified, so I was left in charge of cleanup. 6 hours was excessive, but after we pulled most the meat and bone out, we had to hose down the hedges, the ground, the grass he bled in, the ground/floor outside and inside where he left a decent amount of blood had to be rinsed and sterilized. The mower had to be rinsed and cleaned. It had some damage from drop. The private that started the mower had to be smoked by his NCO. We finished in about 4 hours of actual work with 2 hours off ducking off mixed in, cause the sham sh. I once offered a girl a tuna sandwich, and made a comment about tuna being dolphin friendly. She then said I thought tuna fish came from dolphins. Just scroll down a web page or Facebook feed and have a look at ads. Things like only 2% can solve this puzzle crap like that. Those ads get posted so much because they actually work on a lot of people. In grade 10, we had a science test, and the teacher gave 1 point for putting a date on the paper, and 1 point for your name on the paper, and then there were 98 points for the rest of the test. A guy sitting in front of me got 0.5/100, didn't write the date and only wrote his first name. I was doing a COVID decon of a medical supply warehouse that had a confirmed positive employee not too long ago, and while my team was inside doing our thing, the floor/shift manager was following us around without a mask or gloves or really any of the proper PPE except for a high-vis vest and steel toe boots. I had told her to leave the room. I was fogging with viricide. Edit. Meanwhile, we were wearing full-level C hazmat suits with P100 combo cartridge respirators and all seams taped up. One of my closest friends. Really good guy, but well. I'm learning Spanish and I once told him I was reading this Don Quixote book. I complained about how difficult it was because it was written in 1605. And he said wait. Spanish existed back then. At a work Christmas party in a Mexican restaurant, an Irish colleague was trying to argue the pronunciation of jalapenos with the Mexican waitress was jalapenos. He wasn't joking and got so upset with her taking the piss out of him that he made a scene and we almost got thrown out. That trick where you call water by a scary chemical name like the hydrogen monoxide so that people will want to regulate or ban it. That trick where you call water by a scary chemical name like the hydrogen monoxide so that people will want to regulate or ban it. I once got into an argument with someone over my own name. There are 2 pronunciations, German and English. And they just couldn't accept the fact that I use the English pronunciation despite the fact that we were speaking English and it's what I've used my whole life, but nope, I was lying to mess with them. I once got into an argument with someone over my own name. There are 2 pronunciations, German and English. And they just couldn't accept the fact that I use the English pronunciation despite the fact that we were speaking English and it's what I've used my whole life, but nope, I was lying to mess with them. High school. History. Topic. Titanic. So the iceberg was about the size of a, yes Ms. D \___________________________________________________________________________________________________ Don't icebergs fall out of the sky? To this day I picture an iceberg the size of a small island falling from the sky being seen for hundreds of miles away like a duck and meteor. People that cut holes in their masks because it's easier to breathe. Knew a kid who drank bleach to prove it wouldn't kill you. A week later he showed up at school after taking a shot. He said he proved his point when the teacher asked why he was bragging about it. Mr. Hawk just said, but you cannot argue that without that medical treatment you'd have died, though you even said you have stomach damage and a burn esophagus yourself. This kid was bragging about that. He was not mentally disabled or otherwise. He was just that kind of idiot. Edit, thank you all. Who'd have thought my most upvoted comment would be about some kid I knew drinking literal bleach. Rip my inbox. Hey, you made it to the end, nice job. Remember to like and subscribe, it's free and you can unsub whenever you want.